Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to talk about House of the Dragon Episode 3. So, Chris, you want to kick us off with some introductions?
Yeah, my name's Chris, an erstwhile YouTuber, and I'll get right out of the gate here. I thought this episode was capital G great.
And Daniel?
I am not a YouTuber, just a friend of Steve's and Chris's. I also thought this episode was pretty good.
Yes. So, before we get into Episode 3, we did make a goof on the last stream because we did say that there was a 6 year gap. It was actually a 6 month gap. So,
Ah,
yeah, so we got that wrong. So, you know, our
did you get
mistake
lots of
last
hate,
time.
hate mail?
No, I had a nice comment, just like, hey, by the way, it's six months, not 6 years.
Oh, that's good.
And there was another comment about that during the when they went to retrieve the egg in the second episode, that
Hmm.
they would have never used the dragon, or he would have never used the dragon to kill anyone because they weren't at war. But the Targaryens aren't the most predictable bunch,
Yeah,
so that's why I thought maybe someone might lose their temper and make a mistake. But so no, we appreciate the correction, and
that's good. It's great to start with a what we got wrong section at the
yeah,
start. I think that's pretty awesome.
because I'm sure we're going to get a lot wrong, so it's okay.
Absolutely.
But there was a 3 year gap in this episode.
Yeah,
So we got that right, I think.
yeah, we already got it right, so we're off to a good start.
So at some stage we'll be 6 years and say no, we actually meant this episode.
Yeah, no, we meant the future. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it seems like this episode has been pretty popular. Been The reception seems to be pretty positive with it. So you both were fans of it. You both thought it was great.
Yeah, I particularly I liked the character arcs, the development that happened kind of right across the board, a lot of the ways. So we got a bit of development in Viserys's character, we got a bit of development in Rhaenyra's character, we got a bit of character development in Daemon's character. Everybody seemed to move on a bit, and we got a bit of everybody, but not too spread out. It seemed to concentrate on certain characters at certain times. It was fun.
Mm. Daniel, what stood out to you in this episode?
Probably the Crab King or what? Crab King not being the enemy. I
Mm,
guess. I guess the very beginning episode it said the Targaryens were their own worst enemy. So
It's true.
it's maybe it's not about any one evil entity in particular.
Yeah, and they did make reference to him being a bastard, or did I misunderstand that? Because I thought they mentioned that he was a bastard. I thought they were going to try and do something there with that, but I didn't think if they did, I missed it. But
it
Who?
seemed like
Who?
it seemed
Who?
the crab feeder.
crap.
Oh,
It seemed like the whole thing was a bit of misdirection because they did set him up as a big bad at the end of the previous episode, so it did look like okay, here's the impending doom, and then you know, 45 minutes later in screen time, he was half the man he was before.
Yeah, yeah, the good old crab feeder. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get to that part.
Yeah,
So I did. Yeah. Brady said I like this one, but it was hard to be invested yet in these characters as they are fighting a battle with the crab guy. Yeah, there was we'd have a gap, and there's just something about, maybe I'm easily entertained, but there's something about dragons and just attacking, like a war setting, and dragons just raining fire down on people, just
yeah.
satisfying.
Just mass scale slaughter. It's a great way to spend a Monday night. Like, it's no good doing it in fives and tens. We need hundreds at once in a ball of fire. But it is incredibly satisfying. I do agree.
Daniel, are you a sucker for dragons too, or is it just us?
oh, I like him. That dragon was seemed different than the other dragons. At least, like taking off, he seemed offish. I don't know if those arrows like affected him. They seemed to like bounce off, but when he flew just different than all the other dragons have flown taking off I've ever seen.
I noticed that was a bit more angular or something. Or yeah. I actually thought the art was off a little bit, just
Yep.
with the spread of them.
Yeah, that was Damon's dragon. I think he's more. His neck is more elongated.
Yeah.
So he looked more like a lizard. And I thought, I don't. Some of the CGI on that whole section seemed a little. I mean, it's hard not to be too nitpicky, but there's a couple of parts when it seemed a little weird, but not too bad. And Chady, I hate Chady. I love this episode. And they finally go to war with the crab feeder, and of course, fun dragon times to be had.
Yeah, it did strike me a bit odd that they were in the caves, but they couldn't breathe fire down the caves. That would seem to be perfect fodder for trapping somebody in there and then just roasting them all alive. But it didn't seem to be a thing they could do.
Yeah, and the perspective of we seen when the dragon came of the guy that thinks he's getting saved, and then his whole body just gets crushed by the weight of the dragon. That was a cool entry scene to the episode.
In a weird way, I thought he was saved, though. I mean, it was definitely the better of his two fates at that stage. I think was just to have it ended, rather than just be nibbled up by crabs.
Yeah, I guess it's a better way to go out. And when the dragon did come and start just breathing fire on everyone, I kind of thought, what about the people who are tied up who are being fed to the crabs? But a dragon isn't exactly a precision weapon; it's just a bomb.
It's very blunt. But there is very much a class system going on here. Like you have the higher powers, and then anything to hold power, everybody else is expendable in terms of the plebs. I think that goes for this world.
Yeah, I had the same thought about the caves and the dragon just spraying fire in a cave. It's fish in a barrel, but that would have made so much of a fun story, I guess. So.
Some caves are deep and windy.
That is true.
Assume this one was, even though it looked pretty straight on the inside.
Yeah. Maybe the fireproof, at the front of it, the fireproofing was very advanced at that stage, and therefore they knew it was. They tried it a couple of times and it didn't work. So yeah, that is a possibility.
The archers were above, so it seemed like a pretty crazy cave complex.
Yeah.
And then King Viserys is just having a party with all his friends for a birthday, getting ready to go to an even bigger party. Just
a very lonely party for Viserys. He sat by himself a lot of it, whereas the Queen, etc., was in company. Everybody else seemed to be in company, and he was sat by himself, very lonely, getting drunk by himself. I could relate.
Yeah, he was missing a couple of digits there too. I think from the last episode with the maggots, and I guess he didn't end up saving his fingers. So maybe he's just drinking to dull the pain.
I feel like in Game of Thrones it said like kings had died from sitting on that throne, from getting like lacerated.
Yeah, well, isn't the idea is that you should never feel comfortable sitting on that throne? That's the design of it, is that it should never be comfortable. It's there to keep you on edge, more ways than one.
And Chedia said, love how they're showing Viserys is deteriorating. Yeah, he's falling apart.
Yeah. Stepping a bit further in, but about Viserys, I think he's deteriorating because we kind of said he's a bit like a damp squib. There was nothing to him. But I actually think it was shown by the end of this episode that he's just a good man in a world where good men cannot exist. He's prepared to do the right thing, but everybody around him is just assuming that he won't, or that he is going to be a good thing, and he feels very on his own. There's nobody with him. There was just the guy who came and spoke to him at the end, seemed to be on like a level with him and seen him as a person. Because even he snapped back to him and said, you're just like everybody else. And he went, no, this is what I would do for your best interests. So he seemed to have one person, and he dismissed him sort of at the end as well.
Yeah, I think he was starting to get a little ornery too. Finally, I mean,
Mm.
I think he's, you have to be a little bit, to be in that position. It's going to wear on you.
Yeah. Do you feel sorry for Viserys? I think around the end of the episode, because again, he can see his relationship with his daughter falling apart. He doesn't want to be her king. He wants to be her father, but obviously the legacy and the succession actually is getting in the way of all of that.
Mhm.
She at one point says she feels completely alone too. So
Mm.
they're both just together alone.
Yeah, it seems like he's kind of starting another family with Alicent, and she kind of feels left out. Kind of an afterthought. And plus, it seems like everyone's assuming that the newborn son will be the heir, not her. Which,
Mm.
find out later that he still intends to, keep her as the heir.
Which goes to me goes to say that Viserys sees his first wife as his true marriage, and this one as being him happy and like separate from the run of the kingdom. That's kind of to do with his happiness and his other life and that kind of stuff. He doesn't see it as the one big family, to me anyway.
Brady says it's a little crazy that this war went on for 3 years and all they needed was to do was bail them out.
Yeah, one man.
He's a good man, but not a good king. I think Daemon and Viserys together would be a better duo without the high towers. I really hate the high towers.
Yeah, they are the deliciously bad guy in the whole thing. Although Otto's just doing what Otto's gonna do. Like he's playing the game. Whereas few others are really actively playing the game. He's the one that's showing it front line and center. Everybody's kind of making alliances in the background, doing their own thing, but he's actively saying, I'm going to influence this from where I am. So I think he's meant to be the antagonist at the moment, where you kind of look at it and go, "Oh, you rat bag."
Doing pretty good. He set that up to where his daughter would end up being the queen, so
Mhm.
he's playing the long game. I mean, he's doing pretty good.
Now he's just got to figure out how to set the little son up to be the king. And it seems like all of that pushing kind of made Viserys make up his mind to not have that happen, to stick with his initial plan to make Rhaenyra the heir.
Mm-hmm. Chidia said, which makes it even worse for Rhaenyra. Her mother was not his choice.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that actually. The impact on her of that choice, because she's kind of so stoic through the whole thing. She doesn't let anything really show, except for those quiet moments. And very Daenerys like. They definitely are setting her up to be of similar stature, thought, and character as Daenerys is later on. That kind of good judgment, fair, just, and in control of her emotions at most stages.
Till that boar came out.
Until the boar came out. Well, but again, Daenerys at the start was very frightened by conflict and by threat as well for all of her similar stature. When there was a real threat that she couldn't be protected from, she would fall apart as well. So I think it's part of the growing stage. And it was actually my wife commenting on it, the fact when they killed the stag and she killed the boar. Like obviously there's the symbolism of her being covered in blood. That's another one, but she actually had blood in her hands, whereas Viserys has been told to stab a little to the left in order to kill. She's butchering this child or this boar that's already been killed for, but she really finishes the job. So it's like again setting up her character as being, a bit more king queen worthy.
Chitty said she's feeling left out. She walked in, nobody even looked, and she's supposed to be the heir. Yeah, she's getting disrespected. No one really takes her seriously. I think just because they think she won't be the heir.
Except for Cole. What was his first name? whoever she had appointed to be the
Mm-hmm.
the King's Guard
Kingsguard.
that went out with her and got attacked by the boar first. He said that he owes her everything pretty much.
He's the one that respects her, or that he gained his position because of the decision that she made. So he's the one that is invested in her as an individual, and he isn't from the same inner big family circle that a lot of the rest of them are. That's kind of the point of him saying this is the highest that any of the coals have risen. So actually, his fate is tied to hers in some way.
Yeah. Did anyone else get the Baratheon vibe as when she killed that boar?
I
It's
reflected back on that battle when it happened, and the whole like King's Hunt procession seemed like so large. I wondered how Baratheon could have got bored, but Baratheon was more wild and ambitious than this guy is, at least when hunting and like having a drunk good time.
yeah. I think the drunk part is probably the worst. Probably what helped him, fall into that boar. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Chetty says both her best friend and her father betrayed her 6 months after her mother died. I think that would make me angry too. Yeah, it's a lot of changes in 6 months, or in that time period, and then now we have a jump, and she has another sibling on the way too. 3 months, or 3 years, 3 years since her mother died. So yeah, lots of changes.
Yeah, Chad is like Rainier's defense lawyer there, saying these are the reasons.
I think during that like birthday party, she's like out reading a book, making that bard just play the same song over and over. I felt bad for him because she's just like, "Oh, play the song. How about a different song? No, play the same song."
It's the same
It's
song.
like a
Yeah.
record on repeat, but the olden day version would have been terrible.
Yeah.
I have a sister like that.
Yeah, no radios. You have to have someone do it for you. I'm totally team black. Yeah, I love the Targaryens, their outfits too. I think they're really slick.
I was just about to say that the one where she's sitting underneath the tree, reading when she's getting played that with the little metal shards in between the folds of. Some of the costumes are out of this world. I just astounded by the level of detail in that show.
One
There's like
weird thing
nothing
I
left
know,
to chance.
when they were hunting, they had dogs, and the dogs' collars all had like huge spikes coming out of them, like menacing, giant, sharp spikes, which was crazy. I'd never have a dog like that, but
You might do if you're hunting for deer
Or for stags.
or for
How do you-
stags. Indeed, yeah,
how do you ever grab them by the collar? I guess wear chainmail.
that's true.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so the white stag, the symbolism of her of Viserys finding the brown stag, and she finds the white stag. I think kind of a sign of things to come. I'm guessing.
Yeah. And again, about her judgment, telling Cole to stay his sword, put it away. There wasn't a need to intervene at that stage. There was a respectful look from one to another. That was nice. That was a really nice scene because again, it showed the power of mercy rather than the power of bane to the crowd that says you must kill this magnificent animal that Viserys went through. And use the Lannister weapon to do it as well as again. Another Patsy kind of moment to say, this is what you must do. He just feels lost and trapped, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't a real hunt. He basically just waited until it was over and walked out and stabbed it. I guess
Twice.
like he was trying to do with Damon's War in the end.
Yeah.
Just walk in and stab the final poke.
Yeah.
I think that's what enraged him, is him saying our war instead of like your war. He already was like claiming half ownership over something he refused to be in the whole time.
Yeah.
And so Damon just beat someone with his helmet.
Yeah, so the whole, you know, you have to go a little bit to the left, or you know, he has to kind of tell him exactly where to strike the stag
I, d-
who can't move.
I do like those moments of Game of Thrones. It has those little moments of like humor, you know, like dry humor to say, right, here's a big moment. You gotta kill the thing, it's gonna fall to the ground. Oh, just a little to the left, you know. You'll get it this time. Well done, sir. It's almost a bit Monty Python.
Yeah, there are a lot of those moments in there, but it doesn't
Yeah.
go too far to where it seems goofy.
Yeah, no, it still has to have that super serious tone most of the time. It's just a little bit of brevity, you know, just to show the ridiculousness as a character. I think you wouldn't do it to Rhaenyra, you wouldn't do it to Daemon. Um, yeah, Daemon's not laughing anytime this series. I don't think.
Yeah. So then, of course, you know, another pathetic moment for Viserys, and I feel like I bash Viserys all the time, but you know, towards the end of the episode when they're saying we should go help Damon, we should help him out because he's in, you know, not so great shape. They're running out of men and they're running out of provisions, and his wife has his 16, 17-year-old wife has to tell him, what would you rather have? Like, what would be the better outcome for you? Like, you have to have your teenage, you know, wife explain this to you, and so. Chaddy says, like the spear. Look at my big Lannister spear. Yeah.
He was kind of pathetic as well. He was a bit like a lapdog, as if the Lannisters were just on the rise, so to speak, or you know they hadn't quite found their footing in the grand scheme of things. They're trying to fight their way in the corner of the house. They have Castle Rock as a place of their own, but they're trying to intrude in the bigger game.
And there's two of them, one that's in the King's Court and one that is out, I guess, a night somewhere. Twins.
Big Lannister spear. Hope we see the big Lannister spear again. Future episode. Oh dear. Oh, are the twins?
And of
Very
course,
nice.
it's, you know, towards you know, when Damon does get that letter that he's going to get help, he doesn't want help and he wants to do it himself. So, what did both of you think about that whole last sequence?
I wondered if it was the prince that was like talking about the plan, saying we need like to put someone out there to draw them out, if it was his plan or if it was Damon's plan. Because it seemed like Damon had discussed with him, and Damon said he would because he like volunteered him.
Yeah, it seemed like it was Daemon's war to win. It had to be seen that he won the war because he's really the challenge. I think even the Valyrians don't see themselves as being able to challenge the throne directly. They'll have to do it through him. So, yeah,
Poor
the
messenger.
poor messenger is right. That poor fella. Here's a letter, Baish. But that bit where he does step out and he does kind of seem to sacrifice himself, it seems like everybody is aware of what's going to happen. Even Crab King seems to know this is a setup, but I think he kind of trusts in his overall numbers and his overall strength and what he can see.
Yeah, it
So,
seemed like the first like volley or two, he was just testing the waters, kind of expecting them to die, and then he sent them all out, and that's when the other army like came over the little hill,
Yeah.
Corlos, and then
but it was very Jon Snow-esque the way the whole thing played out. He was the lone. He would butcher down a certain amount of them to set the tone, and then the reinforcements would come as he got tired. It was kind of like that trope that had happened a few times, I think, in this Game of Thrones show. The question is, of course, with Crab King having grayscale, does Daemon now have covered in his blood? Obviously, I did look. He didn't have gloves on.
Yeah, I wonder that too, because he looks like he has grayscale, and he was carrying his torso out at the end,
Yeah.
touching it. So I don't know. I would imagine they would kind of let us know if that did happen, but yeah, I wonder that too.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if they knew about the effect of grayscale at that stage, or whether it was kind of an unknown. And so, they didn't know what was going to happen from touching. But that was something that jumped out to me when he's carrying that. What a cool slice of the body, I have to say. Like, from the shoulder to the diagonal. I thought that was a very cool image.
Yeah, that was quite the way to end the show.
Yeah.
There was a lot of action right at the beginning and a lot of action right at the end.
Was an Arya style stabbing indeed.
Yeah, towards the when he goes and kind of surrenders and pulls his knife out and goes on a little rampage there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that too, grayscale. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I was kind of in a way I was a little bit bummed out we didn't see like a showdown between the crab feeder and Daemon, but I guess it's still kind of cool that they don't show us.
Yeah.
I don't think the crab feeder was intimidating at all in a real battle. He didn't appear intimidating at all.
Yeah, if he turned up the showdown, he pulls out his sword and he throws 3 crabs at him. It's not. It's a bit like the scene in Temple of Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom when he just pulls out the gun and shoots him at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
very
that was-
impactful. Just that silhouette of walking out of the cave, though, dragging the body behind him, or the bit of the body that he had.
The
Like, oh yeah.
trail of intestines behind that, just dragging along too.
What is it? What is it that makes that bit so cool? Like, that is disgusting in reality, but like, you're like going, wow, really good makeup work, and it was very believable.
Yeah, that overhead shot of all the intestines coming out.
Yeah.
Very effective. I've seen the talk that it was grayscale and it may contribute to some madness he will have.
Yeah.
If it's true to the books and the original Game of Thrones, he will get grayscale, but maybe it isn't grayscale, or maybe they just forgot what grayscale did.
That would be interesting to know if it had deviated from the books at all yet, for dramatization's sake, or whether it was sticking quite, because the books, in historical text, you'll only get beats, I would imagine, of what happens rather than kind of the narrative play out. So it'd be interesting to see if anything had really diverged without getting any real detail in it,
And we are jumping quite a few years. Well, I wonder how many years we'll get through by the end of this first season, even.
Who will have character-wise, and yeah. The whole thing's setting up very nicely. I think each episode, it's moving a lot quicker, I think, than Game of Thrones would have moved. There's character progression happening, probably because those time jumps, they kind of have to rattle through a lot of stuff, a lot of characters and time, so they don't kind of dwell on one person for too long. They have to see them at the various stages of breakdown or rise or madness, as you'd imagine.
Yeah, I think it goes a little quicker too, because we already have a setup for the world and the factions and the families and everything. So I think it just assumes that you've seen Game of Thrones and kind of who's who, so it kind of skips all that all that setup and just gets into it. Chetty says, "What do you think of the next episode again in a few years?"
Probably be another jump.
I'd imagine the young child Dragon will be a bit older. At least kind of pre-teen years. You know, he's a small boy. I would imagine that would be a thing.
I think some of the actors are going to change too, right? Because they're
They
going
are.
to get older. So I think it's
Yeah.
not this one, but the next one, but I think the following week.
It's episode 5, I think, is where the jump happens. Because I was a bit confused by the casting. The original cast was went, but that's not who's acting that. And then, of course, when you click on it, it says from episode 5. And once you realize there's time jumps, you're like, oh, okay, I see what's going to happen. Which is a real shame because I think Millie Alcock is amazing. As Rainier, like really, she's a bit of a superstar, I think. Although I think in general the casting is on point. I think the casting's particularly great the whole way along here.
What would you guys think if, like, 5 episodes in, it was just all new cast, all the old cast was just dead of bad stuff for old age? It just like was going through years rapidly.
That's a hard sell. I think if you're invested in character and you're building it up week on week to the point where they just reset everybody, I think they can do it, stagger it. You know, that person drops off this week, and then that person drops off next week, and then they kind of get back in. There's somebody about to hit a grisly end in some way. One of the 2 male characters is about to die. I feel. I know nothing, but I feel it's in the oft.
And Chetty asks, "Did you immediately know what dragon and rider it was at the end?" No, I did not know. Did either of you know?
No, not at all.
It's like the younger kid, I think, the nephew that I said might have devised the plan. He was talking about a plan when Damon showed up on the dragon, and they asked who was going to be like the pawn, and he said Damon. He's the only one fighting anyways. So.
I often look at that and go, right, who's the unnecessary character that was introduced that didn't really have to be there, but narratively will be there for other reasons?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Oh, and when he showed up off the dragon and went up where they were like forming their plan, like every officer looked disappointed. That wasn't like didn't have a seat at the table. It showed all their faces, and they just didn't seem to be on board anymore.
I forget his name, but they already changed the Valerian's son. There's been a couple of casting changes, but no, we have a major. I think a few major characters are going to change here in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I think they're also swapping executive producers too.
I heard that. Yeah.
Interesting.
So the showrunner is being dropped to work on other projects, and I was listening to a Pirate TV podcast, and they were speculating that it was his comments about the female violence that maybe didn't play well in a public arena, and they decided you can't be the spokesperson for this show. So maybe speculated that he may be moved on for that reason. When they said, has it got as much sex and violence in it? And he said something to the effect of, I think it'll be very hard for females to watch it. Something like that.
Oh.
And before the show had even aired, so they speculated that it might be something to do with that, because it is quite unusual for a showrunner of a majorly successful TV show that's been renewed for a second series is not going on with it. Maybe he's just been killed off like one of the rest of the cast. Like it could all be part of a plan.
Maybe if Sarah missed the stag and hit him an accident.
That was the left. He meant to hit somebody else and he hit him instead.
Yeah, the other left. Yeah. Yeah, it surprised me because this series, I think, the new Lord of the Rings series is getting its own share of grief. I haven't seen it, but I haven't heard anything at all like that about this one. So I'm surprised that they're changing showrunners You think they would try and keep him around?
Yeah, especially because this seems to be very successful. It had the biggest ever launch for a HBO show, I think. So, it's obviously done what they set it out to do, which was hit the ground running from a major IP. That they are obviously going to stretch out for a number of years. So,
It seemed like there's a bunch of producers and executive producers, like 12 or 14, it seemed like. So as long as George R. R. Martin stays an executive producer, I will have hope.
Yeah, the showrunner's name is Miguel Sapochnik. He's a co-showrunner. Yeah. So yeah, he has entered a first look deal to develop new projects for HBO.
Yeah.
So he's still around, but he kind of said something like he was a little burned out from getting the show kind of started. So I can kind of see that being like, I just need to do something different. So it's possible, but I think that's probably the dream of every showrunner, is to be in a show that's this popular. I mean, I guess it can also be a curse too. I mean, because if you screw it up, then watch out.
I mean, it could very possibly be that, with it being such a successful launch, then he is headhunted for new launches of new shows, because it's not easy to do, especially a lot of people would be sitting waiting for it to fail or to be lesser or to be something that didn't quite match up to the original, and therefore that initial press would just kill it dead. So both this and Rings of Power would have to hit the ground running and go, this is worth watching from week one. I would imagine. So it is possible he was kind of promoted because of it,
Maybe he's sensitive. He's the person he was talking about when he was like, "Oh, some people might not be able to handle this."
Maybe he was one of them.
Yeah. Some people don't like grimdark. They can't handle seeing the bad horror stuff.
Yeah. He was also there for all of Game of Thrones, I think, so he might be ready to just move on. That makes sense.
Could be, yeah. He wanted to get this going, and then the plan was always to step aside. It's quite possible.
They've probably been developing this for 2 years. I mean, I think maybe even longer. Maybe even after just the first series ended, they might have been already kind of getting getting momentum for it and kind of, drawing it out. So, Chetty says, I read the books. It's hard, but I love it as a female. Yeah. Yeah, it's a rough world for sure.
I often wonder about that, how that frames your reading experience or otherwise, because we often only see things truly through our own lens, and depending on what our lens is, then we have different perspectives on it completely.
Yeah, I was surprised by when the series started. I thought they were going to go lighter on the violence and the sex, but they really haven't. They've kind of kept status quo for the most part, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the first two series of Game of Thrones in their own right, they were very sex heavy. And once they got past that period, it's been used but more for storytelling reasons rather than just kind of, we need to have so much of this in an episode, which is obviously much easier to watch. But the violence is gruesome at points, which is great. Oh.
Yeah, Sansa and Ramsay scene. Yeah.
I think there hasn't been as much of that. Like, they haven't used sex as much, except maybe in the first episode. But violence is just part of the world, so
Sansa Ramsay one was. I was going to say Sansa Ramsay one just was unnecessary because often when you have a scene like that, whether in a book or in a film or anything, it's for shock effect to say this is very different from what's come beforehand. But they kind of set up that Ramsay was a douche. Maybe it was just to elevate him to super douche status. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's grim is what is its calling. It's the bit that people really loved it. If it wasn't as grim, people would not watch it in the numbers that they had, or that they have, should I say. Now that's the bit that people revel in, that escapism to say, right, I know what I'm going to get here. It's not like anything else really on TV. maybe the Witcherish kind of mocked it. I think I said that the previous week, but it is gruesome.
Yeah, it's more adult, whereas a lot of TVs become just less adult or more catering to everybody. And maybe that's why it's so popular. I think I seen like someone filming the outside of an apartment complex like everyone inside was watching Game of Thrones, and you see all the windows like change color at the same time because they're all watching the same thing, which is like we're all finally doing that again. Probably over the next few weeks, people will start gathering together and all watching Game of Thrones at the same time.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised my mom and dad watch it. Like they are notoriously middle of the road watchers of TV, and yet they watch this. Like they couldn't watch True Blood or anything like that from many years ago. That was, one episode. They couldn't watch, many things that are of a more graphic nature. Yet, but maybe it's just because it's a fantasy world and people accept that, it kind of harkens back to medieval warfare. And that's kind of what happened in medieval warfare. So it's kind of like historically accurate in some way.
Yeah, I think it being kind of darker fantasy and low magic, I think really helps
Yeah.
it with that. Because I think some people, it's for right or wrong, right or wrong, they think something like the Wheel of Time series, or even a little bit of like the new Lord of the Rings is a little too high fantasy for some people. I think it, I think this appeals to a different group that may not be interested in some of the other series that are out there. That's what makes The Witcher as popular as it is, because it is kind of more grittier and darker.
Yeah. It's a good point, because the Game of Thrones is more of a political historical drama, than it with sprinklings of fantasy and magic, etc. in it, rather than being straight fantasy. In the way that Lord of the Rings is, like you say, which is very much elves, which is very much magic, which is big monsters, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, kind of not as shiny and polished.
Yeah, indeed. It's very much humanoid people. Imperfect humanoid people, as Game of Thrones will be.
Yeah.
There's nobody good, there's nobody bad. Everybody's a mix of both.
What do you think about that, Daniel? Do you think it's that's part of its appeal?
I don't. My parents won't watch it. They don't like fantasy or sci-fi at all. They like Hallmark, and that kind of stuff. So this is out of their wheelhouse. But I think it has a lot of mystery and maybe like kind of a cool soap opera-y feel. There's a lot of like questions and intrigue. It's all like backstabbing and betrayal, and people love that. People love to watch backstabbing, betrayal, and murder, even if they don't admit it.
It's a great water cooler kind of thing. Kind of meet somebody at the photocopier or something and work, and then you go, well, what do you think's going to happen? Because kind of anything's possible. If you've watched the show at all, everything's on the table. There's no major character really safe, and it's good to speculate, and then you turn on the next week and see whether you were right. There's that validation that comes with it. You go back to the photocopier and you say, I was right, you were wrong. There you go. What do you think for next week? And then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I think to that point about it being a drama is it's true that people want to see those, people get their comeuppance. When Viserys was standing in front of that fire with Alicent, I wanted to see him put his hand in it. Yeah, Daenerys can go through the fire, so it should be a Targaryen talent.
I was thinking that the dragon would just burn everything and Daemon would be standing through the flame, but it went in like a circle around him.
It's a very good point, though. Like, if you're riding on a dragon, the heat of that thing must be absolutely ferocious. Not to talk all physics, but it's just been projected from its neck a bit in front of you. Like, you've got to withstand some amount of heat. Even coming back off, reflected back off the ground. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if the physics stand up. Might have just ruined the entire show for me.
Sometimes you just have to ignore the small details to enjoy it. Otherwise, their skin will be melted on the dragon.
We read fantasy. I don't really think that's much of an issue.
So, what are you both looking forward to next week? What's your expectations?
Well, I think somebody's going to die. I think either Viserys or Young Boy will die next week.
Wow.
Based on not an awful lot, but I just feel like I feel like we went too far without somebody dying. We're 4 episodes in now, and I think either Rhaenyra's claim's got to be strengthened or weakened in some way, shape, or form by the next episode, because she's kind of prissy at the moment. She's preening. She had the reassurance from Viserys about her claim to the throne, and she just kind of turned and walked away. I didn't see the preview at all. Didn't look at nothing. So I could be massively wrong. Like,
I didn't watch the preview either, so I'm
So
not
is it-
sure as far as what they showed goes. But I kind of expect Rhaenyra to maybe go out and find someone she likes, like her father suggested. Because the whole big thing of this episode was about her marrying and him telling her that she had to,
Control.
basically. And I don't know who would die. I kind of think maybe the Hightower guy might die. He's been pretty scandalous openly, so
he feels like he's in there for a bit longer. You've got to really hate him a bit more before you'll get the satisfaction of him eventually. That'll be a Littlefinger one. When you actually go, oh yes, about time. Deserved every little bit of it, and kind of die a weasel. That's what you want to see.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, as you mentioned, Littlefinger. That's one of the disappointments from that first series. But yeah, I want to see who Rhaenyra marries.
Yeah.
and then I guess the war's over, so we're gonna have Daemon and all of them back in the picture. So there's gonna be some kind of probably drama between them.
Well, he's going to return a
Especially-
hero. So
Viserys is gonna be mad he killed his messenger and didn't wait. So there's gonna be some hostility going on next episode, and if it skips ahead, I don't know.
yeah. Well, you would imagine that Valerian and Daemon will have a very strong alliance after winning the war. They'll be a very formidable force at that stage. And maybe Rhaenyra ends up with Daemon. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll see Daemon's wife.
What I did get off the Alt Shift X episode that I watched of episode 2 was the intro sequence explained. That bit was cool. I did not realize that was the family tree that was going through and showing. With the blood flowing through the sigils representing each of the characters. That was eye-opening watching that and having that explained.
Did you check that out, Daniel? The intro? It's pretty interesting. I didn't know there was so much to it, but
Yes.
the last episode they did add one section for the new son for the Hightower kid.
Yeah.
So one little piece, but not a whole lot. But
It's the blood flowing through it, and then the blood coming back together as they obviously cross or have incest, or otherwise it comes back around. I think it's so fascinating the way that kind of all works.
Hopefully it helped people get over the same intro
Yeah.
song. Everyone was mad about that. But I guess if the intro visuals were cool enough,
Well, a lot of people just thought it was the same kind of as Game of Thrones, even though Game of Thrones was, geography rather than people. Yeah, but Aegon's the kid, isn't he? He's the High Tower kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mind. I kind of see why I mean, if it's a iconic intro. I mean, I didn't have a problem with them using it. The music.
They're obviously going to do more than House of Dragon as a series. I think they've got 4 or 5 spin-offs planned. If they keep the general theming with the same theme tune, if they're going to do this, they're going to do it for them all, I think, and that's going to be part of its identity.
I love that when you use the same music. I can't understand why it bugs people. Yeah, I mean,
I think it's good too. It's like when I watch Jurassic Park. When I watch the new Jurassic Parks, I'm almost there just for the intro music now because it brings back the nostalgia from the old Jurassic Park.
When I played the first time, I was like, "Oh, really?" But actually, once I got over the really part, I was like, "No, it's absolutely fine." Because all of it really would have been a variation of the theme. It has to be recognizable. It has to have the same theme through it, but maybe like a slightly different instrumentation of it or something. And at that point, you may as well keep the same one.
yeah, make it a techno version or something. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking just strip back, or a couple of 100 years beforehand. Maybe they didn't have, the same amount of instruments, but at that stage, I was like, what do I know? I know nothing.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see what. I think this next one will probably be more politics and maneuvering and less battles. I think we probably won't see battles for a couple of
We
weeks.
got our
at
battle
least.
scene. Yeah.
Yeah. Until there's a reason for it.
Yeah. And then we'll see a change after that. So. Yeah, it's bubbling up nicely. I don't even know. Are there 8 episodes in this series? I don't even know if I've noticed how many episodes were on it.
I think it's 10.
10. Okay.
So.
I'm reading one of those magic numbers, so it's. Yeah, there's still quite a long way to go. So there's a lot of things can and could happen. But yeah, I was surprised how much I was really into it after 3 episodes, because it was different, obviously, reading or watching Game of Thrones, having read the first book when I watched it. So I kind of expected it to happen at a certain pace, and this one I wasn't expecting things to move anywhere near as quickly. So
Yeah, it has been good, and I guess the text is like in the books he wrote. The text for these parts are so small that it's like 3 or 4 paragraphs or something, I think.
Shady says the preview alluded to gossip around Rhaenyra, some scandal, and it seems Otto has something to do with it.
of course he has. He's got to plant. He's got to get rid of her if his plan's got to come to fruition. You'd imagine it's Mr. Cole will be the scandal.
Daniel, now that you mentioned that, I wonder if he wrote this book wasn't too specific, but some of the stories and just kind of a generalization. If it was to adapt it, did it have adaptation in mind? So I wonder if he wrote it with the intention of it being easily adaptable because there's a lot of freedom.
I'd say half and half because it's supposed to be like a history book. So it had like the double effect that he wanted and less effort, truly.
That's right. You only have to hit certain story beats. You're not actually telling the story. You're just like saying this happened then, and you don't say about the journey in between. It's quite clever if that's what he did plan, because he gets to fill in, in between those dots with maybe 2 seasons. 2 bits of story.
I think he's probably learned his lesson from the first series. Kind of, leave it open if he does want to adapt it, then having that freedom is kind of nice.
I'd say he knows more about like book to movie and show adaptations than everybody but Stephen King at this point, probably, as far as authors go.
Yeah,
maybe J.K. Rowling, but I'd imagine it's like a big learning curve for an author to
Yeah.
go into something like that. So
That's a good point.
But especially if you had such a successful first series and you were planning out the second one, the following show, you would be very specific, I think, about what you'd be trying to do. I think you would learn a lot of lessons from adaptation of the first one, and then say what makes a good story on screen compared to in a book.
Yeah, Chetty said, yeah, he used to work in film before, so it's probably always in his mind.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. Very smart.
yeah, and thinking about it, Stephen King's adaptations haven't gotten necessarily better. So maybe he's just not.
But he
as
tends to
schooled
not be
as
that
people want to.
hands-on. I don't think King's necessarily as hands-on with his adaptations. He's happy to take the money, and away you knock yourself out.
Didn't he work for another series? I'm not sure.
I believe so, but I couldn't tell you which he worked on.
Let's see.
It's interesting. It's hard not to pick up the book now, though. Now that I'm invested in the show, and it's sitting behind me.
You could probably only read like 4 pages and be way ahead of us.
I know, so I'm like, it's the same feeling I had when I stopped reading Game of Thrones books when the TV series came out. I kind of want to do this as a visual medium because the balance, etc., is so enjoyable. To see, the kind of visceral nature of it, that I don't think you get quite the same impact off the page as you do kind of visually. That could just be my reading style, but
Particularly when we just talked about him like leaving out all the detail.
yeah,
It'd be literally like reading a history book. Like
it'd be like reading
war is a page or two.
Yeah, the Wikipedia, entries for it, probably, the story beats, and you're not really getting enjoyment out of that in the same way as you would as following a narrative story. It's a good point.
He did did some writing for the game Elden Ring. So he contributed to the world building for it. So
that was after the fact. Yeah, he gave them the lore for that.
Good person to go to if you want the lore for a game.
Oh, absolutely. Elden Ring's done all right as well.
Yeah. I'll play it one of these days when I have some time.
I've played it. I'm just not very good at
it. One of these days I'll give it a shot.
I got through it. It was rough.
Oh, really?
There's really not a lot of story in the game. That's part of the game, but the monsters and the little bit of lore you do get is pretty interesting, I guess. So,
it's interesting. Those games' storytelling mechanism is very like Game of Thrones in that it's all the armor and the swords are the story. It's the story of the items within it rather than the story of the characters. Is what the game is. And when you think back to Game of Thrones, like the very famed weapons, the very famed,
and when you
things
do get into the game, you'll find the most detail in the descriptions of the weapons and armor and like magic spells, like you said.
Yeah.
Most of the lore is in like the descriptions when you're browsing menus.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, well, you have to grind for something. I mean, you have to put that time in to grind those weapons and those abilities, and so it has to build that anticipation for you. I have not seen the lore for Game of Thrones.
I watched a little bit. But
there's so much of it.
Random videos about the lore.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard, this book is kind of George R. R. Martin's way of tidying up all his other books' lore, setting like it all straight.
One day when I've nothing else to do, I'll start on that journey.
One day.
And then I wonder whether it was all worth it. Whether my surface level appreciation was actually more fun. I don't know. I've went down enough rabbit holes in my life to know I'm way too far into this now. I wish I hadn't started.
Yeah, it's too many rabbit holes to go down. It's hard to keep up. Yeah.
I'll wait and see how the books end before I decide how lore-y I want to get.
I kind of I don't know why. If maybe it's just my own, you know, just I kind of feel like there's momentum for him getting the books done. Maybe it's just me, but I kind of feel like there's something. Maybe he's, maybe there is an end in sight eventually.
I would imagine he's just like every other creator in the world, that you get to a point when you're like, no, I can't do this right now. And then enough time passes and you're like, I will do this now. I'm in the headspace with which to put the time and the energy in it. So it's always like that kind of creative juices just need to get back going again. And it's just like anybody else. You'd want an end to your series. Just like if you're writing a book, you want to hit the end of the book, just say it's done. You want to finish your album. You want to.
Yeah. And plus, I would imagine he may have felt a little down after the way season 8 ended, and the reaction to it. He probably, but maybe now this positive reaction to this new series is maybe put some wind in his sails. I'm hoping.
Whether he meant it or not, it did tarnish his story. And he'd probably seek to redress that in some way, especially if he can pull off a really good ending to the book series. Then actually his whole legacy will just grow that even more. To say this is how it should have been done. That's what a master storyteller does.
It's hard for it to end a story and make everyone happy.
Yeah.
There's going to be unhappy people at the end of this story, guaranteed. But that's just stories' endings aren't how everyone expects. Maybe just how some people expect. Otherwise, it would be pretty boring if it just ended how everyone expected.
Very true.
It's a very short list of things that universally accepted great endings is a very short list.
Yeah, there's not many.
The media.
Yeah, not many at all.
Even my favorite series didn't seem to end good. I can't really think of very many that ended good, actually. Can you guys name a TV series that ended in a satisfying way?
We just finished The Americans. I thought that ended really well.
Haven't got to the end of that. I was going to say West Wing. Mad Men wasn't bad. But they kind of both petered out, both of those series. They kind of left on this kind of open end rather than having an ending.
Yeah, Charlie says not how it ended, it's how they got there.
Journey Before Destination.
Oh, Dark.
That's what we...
Oh, I haven't got the end of Dark either. That's so good.
I haven't got to the end of that either yet.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of season 2 in that one.
So good.
That's a inventive, crazy show. I see. I didn't like the end of Breaking Bad.
No?
In fact, I could have done without the whole last series, to be honest. It's good. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say it was blew my socks off. Right. I think by the end of it, I just disliked the two main characters so much that I didn't really care. My relationship had devolved so badly with them at that stage that I was like, no. Great show. Fabulous show.
Yeah, one of my favorite series, but I also didn't think it ended perfectly.
Yeah.
Wow.
You see, it's very hard. Everybody will have... Like, some people love the end of The Sopranos. Again, it was a petery out one to me.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than Dark, though.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go do my homework. Go through the list of all the TV series that I've ever seen.
Yeah. I'll see you in a couple of months.
Yeah, I was going to say, but I might not surface again, bro.
Yeah. What about you, Daniel? What's your favorite ending to a TV show?
It's really hard for me to think of one. Like, I really couldn't say.
Well, it's something for us to talk about next week when we come back.
Yeah. That's something for people to put in the comments. That's a perfect one.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Severance. I hope Severance ends good. I look forward to however they decide to end that, because so far it's just been some next level stuff.
That first series was awesome.
That's the one with the Oh, I haven't seen that one.
So Adam Scott. It's one of those TV series where the surprises that are about to happen, you will realize about 2 to 3 seconds before it happens on screen. And I say this for books, I say this for TV, I say this for movie. That is the most satisfying type of storytelling that you can have when you realize just before it happens what's about to happen. Because you can feel the adrenaline rising just before the resolution. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the end
been
of that first series.
brilliant stuff.
And you'll have to get through the first 3 episodes because you'll be wondering why everybody likes this show so much. It's totally worth it, though.
Oh. I'm just going to start watching that.
Oh, it's so good.
All right. Well, thanks for coming by again to talk episode 3. We'll do it again next week for episode 4. And thanks everyone for hanging out with us in the comments. Let us know either tonight or next week what your favorite ending to a TV series is.
Yeah.
It's your homework.
So I can watch 7 series of a TV series to see whether anybody's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to learn that everyone has a different opinion in the end.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is
that's
100% true.
Confirmed. Chris, how can people connect with you if they're looking for you?
They can find me on my YouTube channel at Chris Moen and on Twitter at 7 o'clock Shadow when I occasionally post.
And Daniel, what about you?
You can just yell at me in the comments, and I'll see eventually.
Eventually, yeah. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out. We'll hopefully see you all next week.